Marsha P. Johnson was a black transgender woman at a time when being either was dangerous. She was a revolutionary activist for LGBT+ rights in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but is largely forgotten in American history. Through her work and advocacy for homeless youth and for AIDS patients, as well as her prominent role in the Stonewall riots, Johnson helped spark the gay rights movement and gave an oppressed and silenced minority a voice in American society. Johnson was born on August 24, 1945, in Elizabeth, New Jersey, the fifth of 7 children. Her father, Malcolm Michaels Sr., worked on the assembly line at General Motors, while her mother, Alberta Claiborne, was a housekeeper. Johnson began wearing dresses and attempting to present as a girl as early as 5 years old, but was forced to stop as the culture at the time criminalized the act. Persecution of LGBT people and criminalization of their activities was incredibly common. Same-sex dancing in public was prohibited, the state liquor authority banned bars from serving gay people alcoholic beverages, and people like Marsha Johnson could be charged with sexual deviancy for cross-dressing. Additionally, violence against those who were LGBT was prominent, as it remains to this day. Despite these boundaries, Johnson continued to present as a woman and push for visibility. According to a 1972 interview, her goal was to see gay people liberated and free, and to have equal rights that other people have in America.
Why are you here today? Darling, I want my gay rights now!
She declared that she wanted to see her gay brothers and sisters out of the jail and on the streets again. Johnson truly rose to prominence in 1969, when the Stonewall riots began. Due to the criminalization of homosexuality and violent homophobia at the time, LGBT individuals flocked to gay bars and clubs. These establishments served as places of refuge where they could express themselves openly and socialize without fear of persecution. The state liquor authorities' ban on serving gay patrons was eventually overturned due to protests and advocacy, but holding hands, kissing, or dancing with someone of the same sex was still illegal. That meant that police harassment of gay bars continued, and many bars still operated without liquor licenses because they felt they couldn't get them. The Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village did not require a liquor license as it was considered a private bar, and after its establishment in 1967 it became a refuge for the LGBT community. It was large, cheap to enter, and welcomed drag queens who were turned away at other gay bars and clubs. Johnson, who was presenting as a woman and working as a drag queen, was one such persecuted individual who found a home at Stonewall. The inn became a nightly home for runaways and homeless gay youth, and was one of the only gay bars that allowed dancing. Unlike other gay bars and clubs whose clientele was largely wealthy white men, Stonewall became a hub for homeless and impoverished youth of color, as well as drag queens and transgender individuals who weren't welcome elsewhere. On June 28, 1969, police surprise raided the inn. Armed with a warrant, police officers entered the club, roughed up patrons, and, finding bootlegged alcohol, arrested 13 people, including employees and people violating the state's gender-appropriate clothing statute. Female officers would take suspected cross-dressing patrons into the bathroom to check their sex. Additionally, police allegedly sexually harassed many patrons as they frisked them, and violently handled employees before shoving them into police cars. Because of the haven the bar had become, angry patrons and sympathetic neighbors didn't disperse, but waited outside the bar to witness the scene. Finally, when a police officer clubbed a woman named Storm DeLavery over the head for saying that her handcuffs were too tight, a violent riot broke out and the crowd exploded. The community could no longer watch their friends be harassed and assaulted. Marsha P. Johnson was among the first to resist the police that night, alongside her friend Sylvia Rivera. Following the riot, protests involving thousands of people continued in the area for 5 more days, as the LGBT community rallied around what had occurred at Stonewall. Though the Stonewall uprising didn't start the gay rights movement, it was a galvanizing force for LGBT political activism. Exactly 1 year after Stonewall, the first gay pride parades were held in commemoration of the event, with Johnson participating, and joining the Gay Liberation Front. 2 years after Stonewall, gay rights groups had been formed in every major American city. Johnson advocated further by helping stage a sit-in protest at Weinstein Hall at NYU in August of 1970, where administrators had canceled a dance when they found it had been sponsored by gay organizations. Shortly after this, Johnson and Rivera co-founded the organization STAR, or Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. Transvestite, a word referring to a man who wears clothes traditionally worn by the opposite sex, was used at the time to refer to transgender individuals but is now considered a derogatory term. Marsha P. Johnson would now be considered transgender. The STAR organization functioned as a shelter and safe place for homeless gay and transgender youth, specifically youth of color. It was the first LGBT youth shelter in North America, and the first trans woman of color-led organization in the United States. STAR later expanded to other cities before eventually collapsing in the mid-1970s. In addition to her work with STAR and the Gay Liberation Front, Johnson worked as an organizer and marshal with the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, aka ACT UP. This organization sought to bring about legislation, medical research, treatments, and policies to bring an end to the disease. Marsha P. Johnson died on July 6, 1992, at the age of 46. Her body was found in the Hudson River, and the event was ruled a suicide, a verdict which her friends and community refused to accept and did not find plausible as she was not suicidal. In the time following her death, several people came forward to say they'd seen her being harassed by a group of men and fighting with a man who allegedly bragged to someone at a bar later that he'd killed a drag queen. This led to crime victim advocate Victoria Cruz of the New York City Anti-Violence Project, or AVP, reopening the investigation as a possible homicide 25 years later.
We want justice here. To find out who the hell murdered Marsha.
According to a study by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and the Williams Institute, 41% of transgender individuals try to kill themselves at some point in their lives, compared with 4.6% of the general public. Additionally, at least 28 recorded transgender individuals were killed in the United States in 2017, and at least 10 more so far in 2018. The 28 killed in 2017 is the highest number ever recorded for transgender deaths by fatal violence, according to the Human Rights Campaign. Violence against transgender people has not gone away over the years, nor has general violence against those who are LGBT. The deaths of these brave people has to mean something, and change has to occur now. Marsha P. Johnson was a revolutionary force for LGBT rights. Her actions in the Stonewall riots and her dedication to advocacy until her untimely death created huge strides for the gay rights movement. Without the contributions of Marsha, LGBT rights would have not been brought to the forefront of American society and could have gone on ignored. While it remains an uphill battle, significant progresses such as the overturning of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, a military policy prohibiting openly LGBT citizens from serving in the armed forces, and the right to same-sex marriage secured in 2015 could not have occurred without the gay rights movement that truly began at Stonewall. Transgender women of color like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera started this movement and should be remembered for it. For these reasons, Marsha P. Johnson truly deserves both a spot on the APUSH Wall of Fame and, more importantly, a spot in American history.